All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the Entree Architect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, March 30th, 2023. Thanks for joining us today. As you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here and let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis and I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. It doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar. You said, hey, 2023 is my year and I'm on the runway to starting my own thing. Or maybe you started your own thing a year ago or 10 years ago or 27 years ago, and you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today. Um, as usual, for these context and clarity live conversations, I am joined by my co-host, Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Hello, Jeff. I'm
How
pretty
is Massachusetts today?
well. It's still no leaves or anything, but I started my piano lessons today. So after a 44-year hiatus, I'm back
All right.
at the keyboard.
Jumped right into
So
Beethoven, right?
well, I'm playing Scottish accompaniment, of course.
Okay. That's that makes
So
sense. Scottish fiddle, Scottish accompaniment
yeah,
for fiddle.
I
Okay.
always need more piano players.
That sounds like a need you could fill.
Yeah,
That sounds good.
yeah.
Well, great to have you here. And I'm looking over at the comments. I see Chris Novelli, also from Massachusetts. He's the first in the room today. He says, good afternoon. And since he's the first in, that means that he is the winner of today's John Kenny Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. So congrats, Chris. Glad you're here. Kurt's joining us from Flint, Michigan over on Twitch. Scott Thrift, also on Twitch, says he's fixing the old well pump in North Bend, Oregon. I have a very particular set of skills. Okay, we're going to get into movie themes here all of a sudden, I think. Jessica, welcome back from Los Angeles. And Chris says, "Woohoo! Only a few bathtubs left. Got to grab them while they're hot." Yeah, absolutely. We're if you've been around all week, you know that we've been doing a week from today will be the 3-year anniversary of our launch of Context and Clarity Conversations, and we're going to wind it down on that
Wow.
day. We started all of this during COVID because of COVID, and times have changed, right? The context has changed. So we're going to pivot at the end of next week, and we'll tell you more about that at a later date. But we do have a few bathtubs left to give away. So
Getting a little
congrats on
choked
that,
up.
Chris.
I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I knew this was coming, but still.
It's snuck up on you after 3 years. Michael, welcome from YouTube. Glad you're here. Mark says, good afternoon. Welcome. Glad you're here. Let's see. Manuel, welcome from New York City. He says, trying to come up with an innovative way to multitask so that my brain can finally split in two and become truly simultaneously ambidextrous. All right. Well, good luck with that. Rod, welcome back from Monroe, Louisiana. Yoko from Alexandria, Virginia. Glad you are here as well. If you're commenting away right now, and you go, hey, why are my comments not showing up like Yoko's are, or like Rod's are, or somebody else? It's probably because you are in a private Facebook group right now, and Facebook has rules. Those rules say that your name, your likeness, your comments can't escape that private group unless you give permission. So there is a URL at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen right now. Open up a different browser window, type chat.restream.io/FB, as in Facebook. That's chat.restream.io/FB. And a couple of clicks later, you'll give Facebook permission to let all of your information out. You probably didn't want to hear that, but let all of your information out, and your comments should start showing up like Manuel's and like Chris's and like Yoko's and Rod's. So give that a shot. That'll solve all of your problems in the world. I'm sure of it. So chat.restream.io/FB. And when you get here, let us know that you're here. Don't be a stranger. Even if you're just listening in or multitasking, that's okay. We sort of expect that. But just drop in the comments, say, hey, I'm here, and let us know where here is. Where are you joining the conversation from? All right. We've got a guest in the green room. Have I forgotten anything?
No, but you haven't forgotten anything. I hope she has some of those double peanut M&Ms left for us later after
That's
the
right.
show.
That's right. This week the green room is stocked with peanut M&Ms, and every one of the peanut M&Ms has the magical 2 peanuts in it. So
It took me a
don't
long
ask us
time to
how we
get
pulled
enough of
that
those out
off.
of all the packages.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There are a lot of open
one of
packages just to find the few to get into the green room. But we're
yeah.
happy to stock the green room in that way. All right. Our guest today is a storyteller, a teacher, and an innovator. She's a change agent on a mission to teach 1 million people how to become innovative thinkers by 2025. She's the
Hmm.
author of 10 books, including the bestseller that happens to be our Context and Clarity Book Club book for the month of March. So that's RE colon, Rethink Innovation, how the world's most prolific innovators come up with great ideas that deliver extraordinary outcomes. Carla Johnson, welcome to Context and Clarity Live.
Thank you, and I wish I would have thought I had a handful of the double peanut M&Ms because they really. I am a peanut M&M person, not almonds, not plain peanut. And if I could get dark chocolate double
All right.
peanut M&Ms, then I don't know
Well,
what else I'd need in life. Like,
Yeah,
well,
I'm
you
with you.
should give them
I'm
a
with you.
call. They're probably looking for a new flavor, so that
I'm sure
would
they
go.
are.
I know. I
Yeah.
I like the caramel ones actually.
Mm.
If I'm going with
Okay.
one of the weird flavors.
Yeah, not non-traditional.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, innovative flavors.
Yeah,
I
there
should
you
say.
go.
Yeah.
It's not like the Dr. Pepper flavored Peeps
Oh,
because I think
Is
people would
that
actually eat those.
actually a thing?
It is a thing. My oldest daughter and I have a "please hate this food with me" exchange
I
with
like
all the
that.
weird flavored foods we come across. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
quite a
Dr.
tradition.
Pepper Peeps.
Dr. Pepper Peeps. I don't know if there's any Dr. Pepper fans in there, but
Yeah. Drop that in the
just
comments. If you're a Dr. Pepper fan,
I like Dr.
say
Pepper.
yes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't
unless
really
it's a
In the
Dr.
comments.
Pepper Peep fan.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Pepper peeps. Do they only come out at Easter time?
I would hope so.
well,
I would hope.
guess what? It's Easter
Like
time,
for
so we can go out and look for it.
Exactly.
like maybe on Ash Wednesday, they sort of align with the
That
ashes or
could
something.
be.
Yeah.
That could
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
Okay, can I tell you
Catherine,
something?
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I want you something about Dr. Pepper that we were wondering what was that all about and who was Dr. Pepper? So we looked it up and it was a you might know this, but an invention of a pharmacist who worked at a soda jerk who worked in the pharmacy. And so you know how it smells, it's supposed to taste the way it smells in a old fashioned pharmacy.
Oof. That's
Yeah, that's it.
that's some
Anyway,
That's interesting.
yeah,
yeah, just kind
that's
of
some
interesting.
branding for you right there.
Oh,
Mm.
that's
Well,
pretty.
yeah, but you know how you have a lot of extra time on your hands if you're doing something like scooping ice cream or, so he invented
Yeah.
it.
In the down hours.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. No one's
Yeah.
Exactly.
See,
there.
I'm afraid I'd probably just be eating the product if that was me. So
Mm,
From Texas. Michael says it's from Texas invention.
all right, there you go.
cool.
We've got
Anyway,
the full story now. Very good. Thank you
There
for
you
so
that,
go.
Michael.
yes, you're welcome. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead with whatever you were going to say. Sorry
Oh,
about
I
that.
was going to say, I also am a pianist, Catherine.
Ah,
Wow.
well, I'm far from a pianist, but what do you play?
Mostly classical
Nice.
music. I was growing up. I was the church organist,
Wow.
so went from classical music to organ music. But yeah,
Which church? I mean, I guess it would kind of depend.
Presbyterian.
Okay.
Yeah,
In
Presbyterian.
Nebraska, right?
In Nebraska,
In
yeah,
Nebraska,
my
Wow.
hometown of a whopping 1,000 people.
Was it
Yeah.
a beautiful old church, wooden, with
No,
like
it was
pews?
it was built probably 10 years before I was born.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, fairly contemporary for that time. Yeah.
And so it was
It's a
Presbyterian.
fun architectural fact about the church is that there was always a big controversy about the roof design. And because it was a new style in this little town at the time, they decided to go with a flat roof. And as anyone, above Kansas can imagine, a flat roof in the winter in the Midwest
Yeah.
didn't turn out to be a great idea. So it's been the great budget debate for maintenance
wow.
budget
Yeah.
debate ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hmm.
probably in a town of 1,000 in Nebraska, there's probably the Presbyterian church, the Baptist church, and the Methodist church, maybe a Catholic church. So you had about
Oh, yeah,
250 each.
we had a Presbyterian, United Lutheran, Emmanuel Lutheran, Catholic,
Oh,
Methodist, and one other. We had 6. I can't tell you what the one other was.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a Unitarian church. Probably
Yeah, it could
not.
have been something like that. Yeah.
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 So you had about 100 members apiece, something like that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
Oh,
that's
that's
not a
fun.
bad audience though
Yeah,
to
it's a
be
lot of
lured
church
with.
bazaars all fall, whole fall
Sure.
season.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of soup suppers. Yep.
Yeah. That
Yep.
sounds like
Love those.
Nebraska to me.
Ah, love Rod's wearing a Peru State t-shirt. Awesome.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well, let's first of all, thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. We've been, like I said in the intro, we've been reading your book all month because we're going to discuss it tomorrow. The last Friday of every month is our book club discussion. So I think we probably ought to start the conversation with what inspired you to write Rethink Innovation.
It's well, and first, thanks for having me, because I know we've talked before, and I get all wound up, especially talking to an architecture audience. I've never been a person who has wanted for an idea probably my whole life.
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 5 from this little rural town, but all of my siblings are super left brain, military, lawyers, engineers, people like that.
Yeah.
And I actually started my college degree in electrical engineering, figuring I'm good at math and science, and that's kind of what everybody else did. So that's what I did. I hated it. I was just way too right brained, but I've always been a good writer. And along the way in college, I got a job as a kind of a secretary admin at an architecture firm. But part of that role was writing proposals for the architecture firm. And that blend of, I love to write and I understood enough of the technical side of it from engineering. It was really the perfect fit for me. And so I say that because I pull it forward. My first 10 years of my career were in the AEC industry. And then when we moved, I lived in Omaha at the time when I went to after college, and then working. I worked for my first architecture firm. I was employee number 4. So I get the small firm and how you really do have to do everything. And then went to a mid-sized one. It's BDH Architects now, and then went to HCR. And then when my husband and I moved to Denver, I went to work for a telecom firm.
Okay.
But I got a master's in history, and that actually was my first book, my master's thesis. It's on the Union Pacific Railroad stations in Omaha, Nebraska. So very, very specific. And then after I worked in the telecom profession for a few years, I wanted to go out on my own. So I went out on my own, and I ended up writing a corporate history for Western Union, Omaha Corps of Engineers, and some more like that. But it was always about the story and how the dots connected for these amazing organizations over history, and really how they had innovated their particular industry. And then went on to write some marketing books. And in 2015, I co-wrote a book called Experiences, the 7th Era of Marketing, about how to create story-driven experiences for audiences. And I had people after that book come up to me and say, like, I love the idea, I love the framework, but what I still struggle with is coming up with original ideas. And I'm like, for Pete's sake, it isn't that hard. It's like X, Y, Z. This is what you do. And I was going off on a bender on the phone with a friend of mine one day, and he said, stop, like right there. If you can unpack what I just said and put it into a process, that's what the book is. So that's what I spent 5 years doing, is interviewing people, doing research, looking into how our brain works to come up with ideas, all sorts of things, and to see what happens and where do people get inspiration for their ideas, and how do we move from inspiration to execution.
Yeah.
And to answer the question, is this something that everybody can learn? And obviously the answer is yes, because here's the book that shows how to do it.
Well, that was one of the things that intrigued me. I love books about innovation. Where did good ideas come from is one of my favorites. But of all the things I've read, all the people that I've talked to, in fact, innovation was our topic last week as well. From a completely different point of view, but I don't think I've ever run across a book or a resource where where you systematized it, basically is what you've done, right? You systematized innovation, or you systematized the creative process, maybe is one way to say it, in Rethink Innovation. And so I found that really intriguing, that you've developed this framework, the PIP framework, um, to sort of lay out and work within, in order to, as you say, become prolifically innovative.
Yeah, and what I found is really I learned this without realizing it from architects when I started to work with them, especially design architects, because I found it fascinating when they would go through some of the early sketches or, drawings or concepts of a building to talk about where their inspiration came from and the little details. And it was the story behind what was actually going to be constructed that I found magical.
Yeah.
And I think architects are incredibly smart, creative people who don't get credit for being incredibly smart and creative. I mean, they get credit for great ties and they get credit for being, interesting people at dinner parties, but I don't think they get credit for this amazing ability to really source material for the dots, and then to
Mhm.
be able to connect all those dots in something that shows up in such a tangible,
Right.
everyday way in our lives,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I say architects were the original design thinkers. It's just that IDEO took it and put a
Yeah.
different name to it and, let people dress
Right.
different when they showed up at client meetings kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the design thinking is what architects have always done,
Right.
and seeing how they did that to me was just fascinating, fascinating.
Yeah. So why do you think architects don't get credit?
I think because it's not brought into the mainstream enough. I
Mm.
mean, when you look at architecture projects, their work is done before people see
Yeah.
the thing. And so I don't think people have a connection between, oh, an architect did that. They know an engineer did it because it's still standing, most likely. They know a contractor did it because they see the people on site. But
Yeah.
I think architects are the hidden magic behind all of this that people don't realize. Unless you're a major, iconic Frank Lloyd Wright or Ian Pei or somebody like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So the way that we structure this show, we didn't explain this earlier, but the way that we structure the show is on Thursday, we have you as a guest. So we have our special guests every week. And then we spend the rest of the week exploring different avenues, exploring different ways of attacking the theme that we'll talk about. So all week we've been asking questions like, how do you research? Where do you derive inspiration? What does your design or your creative process look like? And when we were talking about the design process or creative process yesterday, one of the questions that I had was, how many, who of you do you let your clients in on? Do your clients participate in, or do your clients get to view that creative process? And what I just heard you say is clients, or maybe the public, maybe not the client's probably not the right way to ask this question, but the public sees this built thing, this thing that you designed, but they didn't see the process. They didn't see the pip behind the scenes that led up to that point. I think that's a really intriguing thought there, because we think about some TV shows. There was one, somebody's going to have to remind me, that TV show that was on Netflix about the great homes or something, that had the architect and the actress, and the architect, they'd go to these places and the architect would sketch out the
Oh, yeah,
concepts and
yeah.
explain
What's
it
it
all.
called?
I think that's one of the few times that people would actually go, okay, that's an incredible, amazing thing, amazing house, or whatever it is we're looking at. And then you have an architect actually explaining everything behind it. That is a rare opportunity.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a good show.
I absolutely agree. And I think, when we look at opportunities to stand out, uh, be distinctive as a firm, I think especially as a small firm, because I know I worked at small firms that could go head to head with the
Mm,
bigger firms, probably not a 10-person firm against a 1,000-person firm, but
sure.
they could definitely up level because of their ability to even think innovatively in how they delivered and back
Mhm.
office operations and things like that. But I think there's this amazing opportunity, especially for small firms, to stand apart simply by bringing this veil, like opening the curtains
Yeah.
and the Wizard of Oz, showing the man behind the curtain, the woman behind the curtain, and what really goes on. And I remember working at HDR, and we had just this head-to-head debate between a couple of the architects. Of one was saying we really need to be transparent with prospects and customers, clients, how we do the thing,
Yeah.
because this is what really distinguishes us. And the other one was just adamant against it, because he said, if we do that, all of our competitors are going to see that and take it. And then what's our distinctive thing?
Yeah.
And I always believe that by the time you have it operationalized and you're delivering it and you're talking about it, if somebody sees that and tries to replicate it, one, they're playing catch up. And it's
Right.
not like catch up from what you did yesterday or last week. It's catch up from
For
probably
years.
at least a year ago.
Yep.
And so if they're trying to slide in, them doing that is just going to prove how far ahead you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And it
think that's a good
reinforces
point.
that. And I think the other thing is that by sharing it, it shows your thought process and in your expertise. I do work with companies to develop their brand purpose as opposed to just mission and values. And that's another way that it makes a firm really distinctive in that way. And I don't know, I'm curious, maybe you can drop this into the comments. How many of you are willing to be transparent about
Yeah.
how you come up with ideas and in your design process and how you source inspiration in that?
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
good question. If
I
you're
am.
listening, watching, are you transparent? Are you and this is sort of the question that we asked, one of the questions we asked yesterday. Are you bringing outsiders, maybe is one way to say it. Are you bringing outsiders into your design process so that they can maybe participate or at least view the chaos that's probably going on?
I
So
mean,
while we're waiting for them to answer in the comments here, maybe we should go back to the beginning and just ask, what is innovation? What's innovation mean?
and it's a great question, because I think we could ask 20 people what innovation
Yeah.
is and we get 40 different answers at least, because it's not like accounting or IT or cooking. It doesn't have a perceived specific definition. So I define innovation as that ability to consistently come up with new, great, and reliable ideas. And it's a short definition, but each word has meaning. So I
Right.
think of a new idea as something that hasn't been done in your industry in that way before. And I think this is something that architects are fantastic at when you think of them drawing on inspiration for design. I like to use the example of McDonald's and the drive-through for the fast food restaurant, is that they understood they needed to be able to get more cars through faster if they were going to increase revenue. And so they're saying, okay, where can we go look for examples of this, and how can we get inspiration to bring it into their design? And they went to a Formula One pit stop, because what do they have? Cars. What needs to happen? The car needs to come in and out with a specific action happening in a very short amount of time. And they said, let's take what we can learn from that situation and transplant it into our own industry. So had it ever been done before? Well, yeah, it had, but had it ever been done before in that way in the fast food
Right.
industry? No. So that's an example of a new idea. So a great idea, I'll be honest, it's a little bit more subjective.
Yeah.
What I think is a great idea may be different for both of you two. But you think of a great idea as one of those that kind of raises the hair on your arms, or like gives you goosebumps on the back of your neck. It's exciting. It drives emotion, and in a way, it makes you feel jealous that you didn't come up with it. A little bit of idea envy. So that's new and great. But even if you had one of those by themselves, or even those two together, I still don't consider it an innovative idea, because what we need to have happen at the end of the day is have a bottom line business impact. And that's where reliable comes into play. Is your new and great idea something that has a bottom line impact? And you can have an idea that has a bottom line impact that isn't new or great. I mean, that could just
Sure.
be cost cutting. And we know cost cutting isn't innovative, but it's the combination of all three of them that I believe makes an idea innovative. And then on top of that is that ability to consistently deliver ideas that have these three characteristics over and over and over again, is what I see as being truly innovative.
Yeah, and so that's where the framework comes in, right? You've got this system to repeat, to
Absolutely.
very very much like McDonald's, right? Everything about McDonald's is the repetitive process to make sure the fries are the same all the time, and so on. Yeah,
Every
yeah.
place you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've got a couple of answers that say yes, I'm doing that, and that's transparency is part of the process for us. So that's good. We've got a couple of people at least that are letting the clients in, getting to peek behind the curtain. Paid no attention to the man behind the curtain, apparently.
I do the same thing. I mean, I don't do anything that's all that groundbreaking. It's just working with old houses. So it's not creating a new building typology or anything like that.
Mhm.
But if I tell my clients how I came to this conclusion or what I thought and the different components that went into my idea, then they can take those same components and maybe come up with a different idea. That's the way I look at it because we're all, they might
Yeah.
as well use the raw materials or the parameters that I'm using.
Yeah. And sometimes the innovative idea isn't in the design itself, but maybe it's how you get the work done. When I was doing research, I researched a company in Atlanta, and they had an innovation group, and they set aside a week every 6 months for the entire company to be involved in innovation for how the company delivered the software that it did. But because they brought everybody together, there were people who you don't normally think of as the innovators in an organization who became part of this mindset. And there was a woman in their accounting department who took this inspiration idea and looked at her work and said, I'm spending 40 manual hours every month, so a week every month running a report. And so she took what she learned from the IT team and applied it and actually learned a programming language, wrote the program, and took this 40-hour process into about 12 minutes. I find that highly innovative. And,
Yeah,
and then now she's able to come to work and do work that makes her happier, less soul sucking, less of a grind, and inspires other people to look for those little pockets where you
yeah.
can be innovative. So it's not always about the actual building design process itself, but it could be about how you do the work. And I see Manuel's idea about potential liability, and we can walk through the process if you'd like, Jeff and
Yeah,
Catherine.
let's do that. Let's do it.
But one of the aspects isn't to copy and paste something from another industry, but to use it and pick it apart and understand why it works and relate the pieces that matter to your own situation into your work.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go ahead and walk through the process. There are say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. That's
5
right.
steps, that's
Yep.
right.
So where do we start? Do we start in the coffee shop?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's where I started. So I'll share the 5 steps, and then I'll walk through them. The first step is to observe the world around you, distill what you observed into patterns, relate the patterns into your work, then you start to generate ideas, and then you pitch them. So typically what happens is when we need something, it could be a design, it could be a new marketing strategy, it could just be I got to figure out how to do more with less. I think it was Chris maybe or Manuel who said needed to learn how to multitask or be two
This
people.
manual. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When we're looking for those kind of things, we say, okay, let me just do a brain dump. Let me do a brainstorm. Let me just, figure out what I know. And what I saw in my research is that when people and teams and organizations start just by trying to go from 0 to 100 of here's our problem, now we need ideas to solve it, nothing has fueled that. They haven't created a way to bring in inspiration from other things that have happened. And so even if somebody does have an example of how it's worked differently that might relate into the work, because other people don't understand it, it tends to shut those ideas down.
Mm.
And we see this in groups. We even see it in our own brains, Yes, I had this idea. Oh, that would never work. Yeah, but I think it might, and you have the devil and the angel on your shoulders even for ideas. And so what I saw is that highly innovative people were highly, highly observant people, looking at all the little details. So that's where this process started. And in the book, I started just in some place as simple and accessible as a coffee shop. And It was a place that I went, I love to go sit in a coffee shop, and it's something about the background noise that I don't actually have to pay attention to, kind of like in an airport. Really works for my brain, and I'm pretty productive. So I went to a coffee shop and I just sat for about a half an hour, and I wrote down everything that I observed, everything that I saw, which is our first sense that we tend to rely on, everything I heard, smelled, tasted, touched. And the list that's in the book is actually only a fraction of the list of things that I came up with.
It's pretty
And
vivid description, I have to say, with the poopy diaper and the guy chewing his nails and where did the crumb come from? And
yeah,
so, yeah, it's a lot. Anyway, made it come alive. Your description, anyway.
If you want to read a few, do you have it handy, Katharine?
No, I listened to it.
Oh, you listened to it? Okay. I do. I actually happen to have the book handy here. So I'll read a few of these things and see if it comes alive. Smell of coffee, hard floor, skid-free rug, man chewing his fingernails, woman on the phone, man texting, people's names on cups, stir, sugar, napkin station, woman reading, burnt coffee smell, baby crying, floral perfume, poopy diaper, the feeling of the grains of, sugar on the table, community flyers, cold breeze from the open door, employee uniforms. So I sat there and consciously went through all 5 senses.
Oh, you reminded me with the uniforms. Which coffee shop was it? Was it Dunkin' Donuts?
No, it was a Starbucks.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, there's so much that we do every day. I mean, here I am, I'm talking on a screen, and what do I have within arm's reach? Another screen. And I think because we need to get so much done every day, it makes us blind to inspiration that's right in front of us.
Yep.
And that's why when I do the workshops and have people go through this process, I tell them, you have to put your phone down. It's only 30 minutes. You might break out in a sweat, but if the world stops spinning, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
But we don't take time to do that.
Yeah.
And especially if we make time to do it on a regular basis, we see how much around us there is to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that's where all of these opportunities, I call them the dots. Like, that's how you collect dots that you eventually connect to come up with the ideas.
Yeah. I every morning I host what we call our morning mindset conversation, and we do something to focus on growth mindset and how we can prepare our day and things like that. You can imagine in a context like that, we talk a lot about practices, right? It could be a practice of gratitude, could be a practice of whatever. And as I was listening to this, I also listen to books. As I was listening to this part of the book, this step in the process, that's exactly how it struck me. As this becomes a practice, and I know you've talked about, hey, if you do this for 7 days or whatever it is, 30 minutes for 7 days or something. When you're talking about that, I'm going, this is another practice. This is something that we can do to, and it's all going to come back to mindfulness, right? And that's what we talk about every morning. And that was a nice correlation for me as I host all of these conversations in the morning. But it really struck me that, yeah, we have to be intentional to start out this process. Be intentional about being innovative and observant,
and present, and observant. And that whole idea about intention and mindfulness is so important. And I tell the story about when our 3 kids were little in elementary school. There was a bike to work day or bike to school day, and I said to the kids, "Awesome, let's bike to school." So I got them, it's like, you got your backpack, you got your lunchbox, do you have all the things? We get on our bikes, and it's, a mile-ish, maybe a mile and a half, easy ride from where I live to their school. And we head down the street, and we cross over the street that should have done this nice little curve and been across the street from the school. But what I did, I turned on that street, and it was, Jeff and Katharine, like a place I had never been before on the moon. I was so lost. And I'm thinking, I've lived here. How can none of this look familiar? And it turns out I had turned an intersection too early, but I actually turned onto a route that I had run no less than 3 times a week for 10 years.
Yeah.
But because when I run, I've got earphones in, I'm thinking about a million different things, all these little details I was completely blind to. And and along the way, I mean, I saw it with eyes like I'd never seen it before. And it was amazing. It was beautiful, but it's just an example of how we go through our regular routine every single day and miss so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And the perception and the context changes, or
Mhm.
even the context between running and biking, the earbuds,
Absolutely.
and probably not with the kids on the bikes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then from there, we take all of those things that we've observed, and then we distill them into patterns. And there's no rhyme or reason to what the pattern is. It could be loud things, it could be yellow things, it could be tall things, it could be
Gross
communication, it could
things.
be people. Yeah, gross things. Exactly, exactly. And the interesting thing is that as I did this research about how this all works, I came across a lot of information from neuroscience that showed that our brain actually naturally functions in these first three steps. And I know this is just step two, but if you think about our survival, it was all based on
Yeah.
observing the world around us and distilling that into patterns. Patterns generally being, is it safe or is it unsafe? So these first two steps really have been with us genetically just as a matter of survival, but we've trained them to go below the surface because of all the distractions we have in the world around us, primarily with technology or with schedules that are too full, that we don't take the time to do this and pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one little just a side question. I'm trying to think of what we did before we had phones, which wasn't that long ago. I was a fully grown adult when I first got my phone. So did we have books with us or were we always observing things? I can't remember.
Well, there were big card catalogs in the library, I can tell you that. But
No, that I
this is
remember those.
I watched a movie the other day, Legal Eagles, from, I think it
Oh
said it came
man.
out in 1986,
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
with Robert Redford and Daryl Hannah and Deborah Winger. And I'm watching this and I said to my husband, it's so stressful because there's no cell phones, there's no internet, there's no, like, everything was so late, full of labor and
Mm.
lag time in communication and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
But I mean, I think I mostly read or I wrote or I drew. So I don't think I was paying attention anyway.
Yeah,
I
I,
think
I
I was
read
just
I
in my
read a lot too. Yeah.
yeah. But
Mhm.
anyway, all right. Sorry, just
So,
wondering.
so those are the first two steps. And then the third step, this is really where we bridge the gap between, observe and distill can kind of be theoretical. You're not
Mm.
necessarily applying to anything specific there. And so this third step is the bridge between this theoretical world of what you're observing and distilling and the real world of, I have work to get done. And I
Yeah.
have things that need ideas. I have designs to create. I have clients to keep happy. I have employees to hire. How can I be more innovative about that? And so Relate is really about taking these patterns that you've seen and ask yourself, how might we think of what we need to accomplish from this point of view? How might we think about this in terms of people? How might we think about this in terms of, showing up taller in the world? How might we think about this in, whatever in gross things? Like, that's one of the examples in the book. How might we be showing up in awful ways that we don't even realize?
Yeah.
Little things like that. And so that's where the brain will answer the question you ask it. So if we want better ideas, we have to ask better questions, going into the fourth step, which is the generate. So essentially, after you've gone through what you've observed and distilled it into patterns, now you've related those patterns into your work by asking, how might we show up like this? Then the generate step starts by simply answering those questions, but answering them, if you think of a mind map or, a tree
Yeah.
limb where it keeps branching out and out and out, is that you have this new opportunity to come up with ideas that you wouldn't because of how you previously went into the brainstorm or the strategy session. Now you've fueled it in a way that, one, your mind is warmed up and thinking differently, and now you're thinking very expansively. You're thinking, fully of opportunities. And one thing that we didn't talk about is how to set an objective statement. And if we have time, we can go through that. But it's at the end end of as you go through all of the ideas you can come up with, then you start to cull them down. But many times people say, we've got 3, 4, 5, 10 ideas, sounds pretty good, and a couple that are really strong. Research shows you don't start to get to the really creative ideas until you've gotten to 200 ideas. And the only way you get to 200 ideas is to practice and to push each other, or push yourself if you're doing this by yourself. And when you start thinking about 200 ideas, then you have a lot of really rich material to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about how so many of in our audience are probably designing. They may be thinking about this in a different way. They may be sketching, um, probably sketching ideas, but I know that they're iterating through a lot of different sketches, a lot of different ideas. 200, I don't know, but I'm sure they're burning through a lot of ideas. Katharine, do you ever go through um, 200 sketches or 200 ideas as you're designing anything?
I mean, probably if it's a hard problem, I usually sometimes I try to list out the really bad ideas. I try to come up with the worst idea I possibly
Mm,
can. And then there's usually something in that, or I realize that these are constraints. So I don't know, 200, I have never actually measured, but I bet I could if I had
yeah.
to.
Well,
Yeah.
There's
I
some
mean, they're not going to be good
speaking of
ideas.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of constraints, that's part of the statement that you were just talking about, right, Carla?
exactly. And it's when I do workshops, that's one of the things that I have people do when I challenge them with their ideas is, let's start with the worst idea first, because there can be a lot of pressure. I mean, even though this is a process and you're supposed to come up with a lot of ideas, it's kind of like unspoken that if you have a lot of ideas, not all of them are going to be good. But
Yeah.
to really celebrate, you have to go through some bad crap to get to the really good, rich stuff. So by just calling it out and saying, give me the worst that you can possibly come up with. And it's funny, all of a sudden, some people who are kind of like, buttoned up and, don't like to not look like they always know the answer, come up with some really hilarious things, and it loosens people up. And there's a direct correlation between humor and laughter and creativity. So when you do that, then your brain comes up with a little bit more connection, a little bit more practice, and things like that. But it's that idea of sketching them out. If you think about bumwad, I don't know if anybody still uses bumwad, but you do a sketch and then
Yeah.
maybe you do another one and you just change a little piece of it. You change a little piece of it. The same works for an idea. It doesn't mean you have to have 200 absolutely completely different ideas. It's the little coarse, detail that you get creative, or that's where you add the variety in, and things like that can help you get to those ideas.
So so I'm gonna go back to bumwad for a minute because I've
Bumwad
used
and
that
napkin sketches.
I've used that term before, and I don't think many people in the community. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's like a Midwestern thing, but
Bumwad.
we
Yeah.
would
You
call it
said that once
bumwad,
and I
trash
thought,
paper, trace,
trash paper. Yeah. I
whatever.
just call it trace.
Yeah,
Trace paper.
yeah.
That's what you call it, Katharine? Trace paper.
Yeah. We just called it trace. Just trace.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We used to call
Yeah.
it bumwad. So
All right. Well, you and I
Bumwad.
are in
I
the
mean,
same camp, Jeff.
yeah. So I forget what you call the statement, but it's we need ideas.
Yeah,
We
the objective statement. So
the
at the
objectives.
end, when we go to pitch this idea, ideally it's pitched toward a specific outcome or situation that we're looking to address or problem we're wanting to solve. So the objective statement has three parts. The first part is, we need new ideas too. And that's generally like, what's the thing you have right in front of you?
Mm,
And then the second part is a little bit more, it takes a little bit more brain noodling than it may appear at first. It's so we can. What's the ultimate outcome that you want from this? And that makes people think more than they may realize. Because I think the immediate need is an obvious one. But beyond that, we need new ideas for how to bring in new customers so we can. Well, is it only revenue? Is it better customers so we can recruit a different kind of talent? Or, is it more clients so that they're higher paying, or revenue, or, so you have fewer clients but more revenue and ideally less time committed? being very specific about the "so we can" makes a difference, because this is a statement that after you've gone through your 200 ideas that you've come up with, you're going to use to filter those ideas and see, do they apply to what I need to have done? And then the third part of the objective statement is with these constraints. And common constraints are, budget and time. It could be something specific to what's going on in your client's industry or in the market in general, or your firm, or, whatever those are. I suggest using 2 to 4 of those, because I think if you have too many constraints, and that shuts everything down. And we really are trying to at least move the needle little by little by little. And if you have fewer than 2, I think there's too much of a chance that your idea won't live in the real world, because a lot of ideas are great ideas until they have to actually be executed.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. And then when you get to that fifth step, which is pitching the idea, it's really important, because as part of that pitch, what you do is you go back to the beginning and you tell the story of, what did you observe? What were those patterns? How does that relate into your work? How did that inspire your idea? And now how does that fit into the world of the objective statement? So it's theory and inspiration and potential married into reality with bottom line impact with what you're looking to do.
Yeah, I think that's one of my big takeaways from this, and I think this is me wondering if I'm in my own bubble, et cetera. But I think that many of us, when we're pitching the ideas or we're sharing the good ideas, we leave that context out. We leave that storytelling out, that makes that strong connection. And I think in the book you talk about, you need to give them enough, right, that they can imagine, but not so much that it's rigid. I forget exactly how.
Yeah, give them structure and context,
Yeah,
and then let
and
them
then let
fill
them.
in the details
Yeah,
of what it looks like. So,
yeah,
it's a little bit of a balance. Give them enough to get them excited about what you have going
yeah,
on, but not so much that your image disagrees with that image. And I remember that, Jeff, so clearly from an interview that one of the firms I worked for did. It was for the city of Omaha, and they said, we really need to show what this is going to look like, because it was a new building in a historic part of town, and presented to the city planner and some other people. And that was the feedback, is that you were too specific of
hmm
about what this looks like. And we feel that you've decided on our behalf what this looks like.
yeah, yeah,
So that's that balance between the inspiration and sharing the story of what could be, without completing the story on their behalf,
yeah.
without them feeling like they're part of that story.
Without saying this is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I think there are an awful lot of us that have gone there before, right? This is our vision, this, whether it's in the form of a rendering or just the description or whatever. I think we've gone all the way to this is what it is, and maybe it's just me. I'm always leaving the door open for that. Maybe it's just me, but going to this is what it is rather than stopping with this is what it could be.
Could be. I'd be curious how many other people who are joining us here today, if they feel that they have a little bit of a challenge walking that line.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Drop
if
that
it's
in the
just an idea.
comments if you think you take the story a little bit too far sometimes. Put that in the comments right now. We're very quickly approaching the top of the hour, which is just amazing. It's been a fun conversation here, but we'll have to wrap it up here momentarily. But I guess one last question, Carla, before we let you go. You know this world, right? The profession here, the industry here. What's something that the entrepreneur architects that are tuning in right now, what's something that they can do to be more consistently, or as you say it, more prolifically creative or more prolifically innovative in their work?
I say the simple, most helpful, but underlooked thing that people can do, and you alluded to it a little bit, Jeff, earlier, is I call it the 7-minute challenge. And you take 7 minutes a day for 7 days, and you just observe what is it that your challenge is. Look at it from all different directions, write everything down that you can think about it. And you won't necessarily in the first few days solve it, or maybe in the first 7 days, but you're going to look at it completely different. And I think a lot of times we have these perceived limits on what can be done, especially as small firms and resources. And if you're a one-person firm, you're doing all the things and wearing all the hats. But I think when we look at those things and really examine them and pick them apart, and I am a notebook junkie, like an old school, actual physical notebook junkie. I write everything down like that. It's just 7 minutes for 7 days. So it's less than an hour in a week. In your mind, when it's given that time and that space, will go to work and start to solve this. But at the very least, it will help you understand whatever your challenge is so much better and from a different perspective than I think you ever imagined. And
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot easier to start to address than you believed.
Yeah, I
Can
love
we,
that.
but
So,
do we have to
sorry, go
make
ahead.
up the question as well? Because what's a question? Give me a good question. It would be hard to come up with a question that you had to spend that much time thinking about. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as simple like what may be a challenge that you have, Katharine?
Oh, wow. Well, I have a lot. I have a lot of them.
Just pick one.
Just
That's the
pick
thing.
one.
That's the thing I can't think of. Pick one. Pick
It's
one.
too many.
Okay, well, here,
It's too many.
Manuel put a question in the chat. He said, currently, I'm really trying to stop myself from carrying the story too far with the project. I'm experimenting with letting the story develop by itself and observe what the building wants to be. So, for example, and this is a great opportunity to use the question, how might we?
Yeah.
So, how might we was a question that was developed by a gentleman named Min Bassador. He worked at Procter and Gamble back in the 70s. And he understood that there's a dynamic with the language that we use and how we solve problems. So, how should we implies there's a right or wrong. How can we implies you can or you can't, ability. But how might we? Again, your brain answers the question that it's asked. So
Yeah.
in Manuel's situation, you might ask yourself, how might I let the story unfold and let the building be what it wants to be? So even just using something as simple as the how might we statement and just sitting for 7 minutes and just write down what comes into your brain.
Yeah.
And doing that every single day for 7 days, your brain's going to pick up where it left off the day before. And it gets fascinating with all these things that it is kind of like your hard drive on your computer. It's going in the back of your mind between each 24-hour period when you sit down for 7 minutes. And I think you'll find some really interesting answers and opportunities and perspectives that you would struggle to if you just sat down for an hour and said, how do I solve this?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Just a word of warning for everybody that's planning to join me tomorrow morning for our mindset conversation. We're probably going to use this, probably going to talk about the 7-minute challenge in the morning as a practice to develop. So just a heads up. One last
Pam,
question here, Katharine.
Pam says, how might you come back to finish the discussion on another day? It went too fast.
Oh, thank you, man. I always feel the same way. And I know Jeff and Katharine, we've talked before, the time just goes fast.
It
And
does.
I mean,
It does.
I get excited and wound up about it because it's the work I love to do. So
Yeah.
I love talking about it. Thank
Well,
you.
I have an idea of how you might come back again. Is that we're having our book club discussion tomorrow about your
There we
book.
go.
So if you wanted to,
Yeah.
you're welcome to come.
Come back tomorrow if you'd like. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll be
That would
curious to hear people's feedback about the book tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that if you'd like to. We'd be happy to have you. But until then, thank you very much for this conversation. It's is enlightening. Again, I think what's really unique about your book is the structure that you bring to it and the framework that you bring to being innovative. So, thank you for the book. Thank you for this conversation, and thanks for joining us today. And I say this to everybody. I've said this for 3 years to everybody. Thank you for this opportunity, because if you all didn't show up, we wouldn't be having this conversation with Carla, right? I have constantly thought, maybe not for the full 3 years, but I've thought for quite some time that there might be a day where I show up and nobody else does. And then that was when I would know it would be over. It hasn't happened yet. So, we will, as we've been saying, that we'll wrap this up next week. A week from today will be our final context and clarity conversation. We will have a celebration next Friday, which I believe is April 7th. So just come and join us for the celebration next Friday. If this has meant anything to you, if you've enjoyed being a part of the community, et cetera, we're going to celebrate context and clarity next Friday. But until then, before then, first of all, on the screen right now is I've been looking at this actually on Carla's website, the innovation archetype. It's the assessment, right?
Yeah, it's an assessment where you can everybody comes up with ideas differently, and even though we have these images of what an innovator or creative person looks like, I found that there's different styles. So if you go to this link, you can take the assessment. It's free, and you can find out your style, and then it also tells you how you interact with the other styles when it comes to ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. You should check it out. So
Yeah.
carlajohnson.co/innovation archetype is the, in case you're listening to this and don't have a visual, carlajohnson.co/innovation archetype. Check that out. And I've been teasing this out all week. Our guest for next week for Context and Clarity Live, which will be our final Context and Clarity Live in this time slot. We're going to change the time slot. We're going to probably take a week or two off to get things reorganized. But our guest for next week will be Chat GPT.
I forgot all about that. Woo!
We are
That's
going
going to be fantastic.
Wow, I forgot about
we're
that.
going to
Now I'm
see how
excited.
it is. We're going to interview Chat GPT next
What are we?
Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So
I got
join us here.
I got the thing I can think about. How are we going to represent Chat GPT? I'll be thinking about that for 7 minutes a day
Yeah,
until next week.
we'll share our
I like
screen.
that, 7 minutes a day.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go.
Cool.
So join us
Wow.
for that. Of course, until then, please be well, stay safe, keep those around you safe and well. Find a little bit of time to breathe, relax, find some way to rejuvenate, because we've been doing this every day for 3 years. You have to pace yourself. Thanks for going along this journey. Stick with us for at least another week. Carla, thank you. Katharine, thank you. Thanks to all of you out there, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.